Hi, thank you so much for joining me for today's process video, and today is day 3 of 30 days of sketches with Christie's Beautiful Life, and today's sketch in the top left hand corner there is being created by Vanessa Bell. So continuing with my theme, I'm still going on with those photos from our trip to New York this Christmas. Well, it was just after Christmas, and I've got 3 photos which will go down the left hand side, and it's us on Brooklyn Bridge just as the sun was setting on New Year's Eve. So first of all, I decided I wanted to use this beautiful radial stencil from All and Create. So I'm just pushing some texture paste through that to create that lovely circle element, which will go on the right hand side of the photo cluster. And then I've pulled out one of my Lindy's Magicals, and I'm just trying to spread that very carefully through the paste. I left the paste to dry first of all, and now I'm just adding a bit more water so I can spread that around a little bit. You have to be careful because with the texture paste on there, the paintbrush does tend to flick if you're not too careful, and then you end up with splatters where you don't want them. So just carefully manipulating that water around this lovely radial stencil. I absolutely love this stencil, and it just works so nicely with the texture paste. And then the Lindy's are something else. They provide so many different colours from just the one pot. It's incredible. So I decided I wanted to add a little bit more of the colour in the top left hand corner, which will hopefully peek through the strip of photos that I'm going to add there. Time will tell. Just adding a little bit more so I can get that manipulated a little bit further down the page, and also bring it a little bit further around that circle, because I am worried that I've moved it slightly too far to the left, and once I add my layers and clusters it's going to be covered. So just using the packaging technique to spread that paint out a little bit more. Well, it's pigments mixed with water. I suppose that still makes paint, doesn't it? And then adding a generous dose of splatters around those areas, and then just leaving that to dry. So now I'm going to work on my photo mat. So I've just brought in this paper it's from the Vicki Boutin Where to Next collection. That's what I'm using for these photos. So it was already pre-torn. It's from a previous layout that I've created, and I thought that would work really nicely as one of the mats behind the photo mat. So first of all, I'm going to add a white border around the edge of the photos by popping them on some scrap white cardstock and then cutting them out. And then once that's done, I'll mount them onto some black card, and that really provides a great definition of these photos and makes them stand out. So this layout is going to be fairly monotone. I've got a lot of black going on and a lot of blue, but you can see the light was just starting to fade. So the photos are very blue of this, and it's great photos of Manhattan in the background. I was really pleased with those. We took so many pictures on the bridge. It was ridiculous, but I did like this little trio of 3, because it is nice that we've got one of Ross with the kids and one of me with the kids, and then one of the buildings in the background there. So now that's done, I'm just going to trim this black cardstock down slightly. I don't want it to be the full 12 inches. This was just a scrap of card that I had that was slightly smaller than 12 anyway, but I wanted to make sure it was well under the 12 inches. So I'm going to add that to that paper, and then try and find some more papers to layer up with it. So first of all, this lovely cloud paper. Again, you can see these are all from my scraps. I keep all of my Where to Next together in a big box, and I keep the scraps together in a bag, and I'll always try and go to the scraps before pulling out a fresh paper if I can. So just making sure that I'm happy with the length of that, and then I shall stick that down. I like these pieces to be staggered. If you watch me before, you'll know that this is my MO of creating layers behind my photos. And then I just felt I needed some darker blue pulling into this, because I've got a lot of pale colours, so I've just cut off it again, just the edge of that which was already pre-torn from a previous layout. So just trimming off that torn edge and using that to my advantage to stick down next to the other torn edge. So I'm just going to roll the edges that you can see behind that black card. There's not a great deal that you can see, but just roll the edges of that, and then I'll roll the edges of this piece. I'm just going to reposition it because I noticed that there wasn't an awful lot showing on the top, so I just pull that up and pull it back, stick it back down again. There we go. Adding some more glue just to make sure it stays in place, and then rolling up those edges. And I think once this is done, I'm nearly ready to bring in the layout. So I'm just going to stick that down to the cloud paper. And then hopefully the background is nearly dry. So just distressing the edges. I didn't bother distressing the black because I thought it might look a little bit messy, but I did want to distress the edges of the papers just to match the watercolour effect that I've got on the background. So I pulled this out of the 6x8 paper pad, and at first I thought it was going to be for my journaling, but in the end I just used the word this and then that blue stripy piece at the top. So I just felt that it was going to cover up too much of that circle that I worked so hard on at the beginning. So I trimmed this word this off, and then as I say, I do use that bar that I've cut off the top of it to put to the top of the strip of photos just there. So that's a great way of creating your own embellishments. If you don't want to use something as a journaling card, just use elements from it. So now going through the papery pieces, and straight away I see this postcard, which I think will work nicely as a mat at the bottom of the page. So just gluing that down. And then I find this piece with the circles on it, and I'm using my circle punch just to trim that out. Now, because it's very thin paper, it didn't cut particularly well, so I'm just trimming off, and it was a little bit big anyway, so I'm just trimming off the excess here. And I do go round and round. I'm not very good at cutting circles. But I get there in the end. And then I'm going to cut it in half to use half at the bottom here, just as a layer, and then half elsewhere. I'm just looking on the layout. I don't know whether it does actually make it in the end. It might just be back in my pot to use another time. At the moment, though, it's just sitting at the top of the page there. There we go. See, I take it off. So I'm just going to stick this down, and also that strip at the top of the page, just so that I'm not forgetting to glue things and then losing them. And then I find this, I love this blueprint that's on this piece of paper, so I actually end up cutting that off and using it as if it's a piece of paper. So I trim it in half shortly, and I'll use half there where I'm just trialing it, and then half at the bottom left. So just adding a little bit of glue. You have to be a bit careful with these papery pieces because they're very thin, so they can wrinkle quite easily and tear. So other half at the bottom there. And I must surely be ready to bring the base in now. Yes, it's at this point I have a look at this tag and think, I think I'm going too far out again. So I think I really must bring the base back. And this is where I realise the tag's way too big. And also that blueprint that I've put on the left-hand side, I am going to have to trim down a little bit, because otherwise the whole mat is going to go over that circle. Far too much for my liking. So I've got this beautiful lace, black circle lace that we sell at Hey Little Magpie, and I'm just going to add some of that at the top here, just so that it reaches down to that blueprint. So I need to glue the whole mat down so that I can get that in place properly. There we go. And then I can add that lace. And I start with this glue, but then realise that my Nuvo would be much better to glue that down. It gives a firmer bond, so just using that to add a bead and then add this down. So now a loop of ribbon at the bottom. First of all, the stripy navy blue and white, and then I bring in some grey gingham as well, just to add a couple of loops at the bottom there for texture. And it also kind of hides that ending of the lace there. I also love these film strips. These are from 49er Market Spectrum Gardenia. So I'm just pulling one of these and cutting it in half, and then I'll overlap them at the point that's suitable so that it looks like it's one continual piece. As you can see, it's far too long if I'd used them next to each other, so I just overlap those two middle frames and you'd never know. So just adding glue to get those stuck together, and then I can glue the whole piece as a single piece down. So just building all of these vertical elements just to mimic those buildings in the background, really, adding height all the time. There we go. So now I'm pulling in, again from Spectrum Gardenia, the rub-ons. These phrase rub-ons are amazing. I've used them so many times and I've still got plenty left. So I just go for this word that says amazing. rub that down and then go through to see what else there is. And there's a definition for amazing, so I decided to add that as well. I also add some arrows above the word, just pointing to the buildings really and where we were, because it was truly amazing. Now going through the sticker book just to see if there's anything here, and straight away I see this bulldog clips. I think that'll work nicely at the top. And then just looking through the words to see if there's anything on there. And I find one that says fills my soul, so I put that next to the word this to complete that phrase. And then this one at the top says the view. So that just had to be used, didn't it really? Happy times is going at the bottom. And then this one is tour of the city, because we did do a full tour. We walked right down Manhattan and then across the bridge on that New Year's Eve. And this one is World Traveller, which I think would work with any holiday photo really, wouldn't it? So just adding a tiny bit of journaling at the bottom there, photo ops all along Brooklyn Bridge. And then my roller date stamp, and that's layout done. Do check everybody else in the description below who's playing along. And other than that, I shall see you very soon. Bye.